Welcome to the 11 Warriors show for Friday, July 26th, 2024. I'm Jason Priestess. That's Chris Lauterbach. Chris, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. It's been a minute, but the reason we're gathered here this morning is it's football season, right? We talked however many weeks ago it was that Media Days kind of kicks things off, and that wrapped up yesterday. And yeah, man, I'm excited. It feels like football season is officially upon us.
Yeah, a ton to talk about on the Media Day front. We're going to get into that, but really quickly, some big news yesterday. Archie Griffin will dot the I for the home opener against Akron. That's August 31st. 50th anniversary season of his first Heisman campaigns. That's kind of fun. A little neat little tie in there. And Arch will become just the 16th former non-band member, to dot the I. The last, of course, was Earl Bruce, 2016. Been some fun ones in there, man. Bob Hope, John Glenn, Jack Nicklaus. Some really cool. And I don't know, man. Anything in life when you're like, I'm only the 16th person to ever do this, as long as it's like legal and safe, that's a pretty cool thing to claim, right?
Right. Well, and as a Buckeye football player, obviously, I don't think it gets any better than that. I love they're doing it for the 50th year of his Heisman or his first Heisman, because yeah, I mean, who's the greatest Buckeye of all time? I mean, I think when you think football, you think everything, right, about being a Buckeye. It's Archie Griffin, so to have him do it, yeah, it'll be pretty special.
Yeah, I'm so petty too about anytime somebody wins a Heisman as a sophomore or junior, and I'm like, I'm cursing their seasons. Like, I hope they don't ever throw another pass, or I get really petty about it.
Like hoping they get hurt. It's like everything.
Yeah, I don't want them to get hurt, but like I want them to get benched.
I was hoping they'd get hurt, but now at 50, I'm like, I don't want them to get hurt, but something bad has to happen.
A little more mature about it, but yeah, I hope they get benched. Media Days kicked off this week, man. It's the first time they've gone to a 3-day format, Indianapolis. And for a lot of fans, it's like the first real indication that, hey, man, the season's right around the corner. We're basically a month out from, week 0 kickoff games. Bucks are, about 5 weeks out. So a little bit longer for that Akron game, but everyone got some new teams showing up, man. Got USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. Oregon shows up to their first big media days with a gigantic rubber duck floating in the White River in downtown. I thought that was really cool, man. I think conference could use some of this, because you remember when Urban showed up and like Bielema was like, we don't try to flip each other's players, and Urban's like, the hell we don't. You better make sure you guys sign. And the conference needed that then, and it needs a little bit of this now. You've got to keep pushing things forward, show some innovation, have some fun. I'm excited to see just how weird Oregon's going to be. Getting to see a lot more of them. Uniforms and some of the other stuff, but getting to see some more of that personality, I think would be really cool.
Yeah, and just their style of play and how it fits into the Big Ten, and to what level they'll have to adjust, maybe with a little bit more physicality in the trenches versus how teams will have to adjust to them with the speed and quickness and the things that they like to do. You see those chess masters in bowl games out of conference a lot, but in the Big Ten, a big chunk of the teams are pretty similar in the style as they build rosters for weather, Midwest football, that kind of thing. So I think it'll be interesting. But yeah, the duck was cool, and I think just being in Indy is cool. I know they have traditionally, I think Big Ten media is in Indy. It's been in Chicago. I like when anything Big Ten is in Indy, because it's kind of like the biggest thing going on in the city. Chicago's so big, sometimes those events can get swallowed up a little bit. But when it's in Indy, which is a great downtown, a great city in its own right, it just feels like whatever's going on Big Ten related really takes over the city, and that was certainly the case over the last handful of days.
Yeah, for sure. Just a really well put together downtown. Proximity to Lucas Oil is really great. And, I think they announced too that the Big Ten championship game will be extended at Lucas Oil through 2028 this week too. So that's some fun news. Bucks chosen by Big Ten media in an unofficial poll to win the league this year. Oregon picked 2nd, Penn State 3rd, Michigan 4th, Iowa 5th. I guess they're thinking they got Brian out of there. Maybe they can finally air it out and put up 50 a game. But I thought that was surprised, I guess, to see Iowa that high. I thought that, man, it's Washington or USC. None of those teams going to be better than Iowa. But, they're 5th, and we'll see what develops as the season gets underway.
Yeah, it feels like whoever is 5th, it's kind of like a second tier, right? You're going to have this top tier probably of those 4 teams that you mentioned, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan. Then I feel like there's kind of everybody else. There's tiers of the everybody else because there's just so many damn teams in the league now. But whoever finishes 5th, I feel like largely is probably somewhat of a non-factor if you're being real about the Big Ten race.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we got the new teams. There's no more divisions this year, so there's going to be 18 teams. 2 best meet in the Big Ten championship game. So the scoundrels in the Western Division can no longer kind of skate into the game and have a 2-loss season. They're playing an undefeated team from the East. That's over, thank goodness. Also, another annual tradition of the Big Ten, they have their what they call the Big Ten preseason honors. And they've done it forever. And every year they put this out the first day of Big Ten media days. And they pick 10, 12, 8, whatever players through the years. And they're like, these guys are going to be really good. It's kind of all they're saying. It's Big Ten preseason honors. It's a list. It's grown, obviously, now they're 18 schools. But this year was 12 players. They're just like, watch this guy. And I don't know. I don't want to crap on him too much, but that's pretty darn boring these days. Like the SEC, the ACC, they're putting out all conference teams, defenses and offenses. And we're like, here are the Big Ten preseason honors. Just very staid. And I would love to see, we talked about a minute ago with Oregon bringing that duck to Indy, do some more stuff that's fun, because it feels like hollow, man. Just Big Ten preseason, all the guys' name was on the list. But anyway, Buckeyes had 4 of the 12 guys on the list. Safety Caleb Downs, wide receiver Emeka Buka, running back Travion Henderson, and defensive end JT Tuimoloau. So good showing there, but would like to see something a little more exciting next year. Let's go with all conference teams. Let's do something fun. Most likely to have the Big Ten come out and put out an official release. Here's the conference's belief on which coach is most likely to get fired first. Right. And that would really turn things upside down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the whole thing is, I don't know, it's weird. I think most players worth their salt care about postseason honors, not preseason honors, but I think Emeka Buka spoke about it a little bit because the Big Ten lady at the desk was asking, how he felt about being preseason honor, but he's got, Burke on one side of him, he's got Sawyer on the other, and Sawyer's left off that list, and it's just, but Tuimoloau was on it, and God bless JT, he would have a great season, but last year, Sawyer was better than JT by any measure, and was certainly better down the stretch leading into this year, which you would think would be a springboard into preseason honors. So I don't know how much logic and thought really goes into that. Feels like it's maybe a little bit of a beauty contest, but whatever, we're talking about it. So I guess, objective achieved, I guess, for them on some level.
Some level for sure. And you touched on the 3 guys that were with Ryan Day in Indianapolis: Jack Sawyer, Emeka Buka, and Denzel Burke, the cornerback. And we knew some of this, heard some of this, but it was the first time Jack Sawyer really kind of touched on his role as the guy that led the movement to get everyone to come back. And, he had some really, really cool things to say, including, he was the first one to tell Coach Day that he was coming back, and here's what he had to say about that.
Yeah, I think that when we all decided to come back, I think I was the first guy to tell Coach Day I was coming back. I told him I was coming back before the bowl game. And I made a group chat. We all were kind of texting and talking as the weeks and months after, or the weeks and days, I should say, after the Missouri game. We were talking about it. Kind of here and there, and I was just throwing stuff in guys' ears. Trying to talk to them about coming back and why we should come back and how much it would mean to the city if we came back, and to Ohio State, and being able to etch our names and a legacy here if we win a national championship and beat those guys up north. So,
I love that, man. I love to hear that, he was the guy spearheading this, getting the group text going, talking to his buddies, saying, hey, we've got a chance to come back and do something special. Went on to say, he thought that the way that the kind of person he is, he felt like they he did at least. And at first he said we, but then he changed it to I, but said he let Ryan Day down, let the city down. This is a guy who grew up in Columbus, out in Pickerington, the suburbs there. Knows what it means, knows how important the Michigan game is, and having never won that game as a player here, it weighed on him. And I don't want to use the Tebow comparison, but there's some Tebow vibes from that. When he lost that game and gave that speech, and they put up a statue a week later, maybe not quite statue time for Jack Sawyer, but if this season goes really well, and they achieve what they want to achieve, you can look back and say maybe that was a start of what was to be a great season.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a legacy definer for sure, especially after his first couple years, 5-star local kid, didn't quite live up to the hype early on. And even, the first half of last year, good player. But when you think about the rating saying elite player, hadn't quite done that yet. But the last 6 games, he was a wrecker. He was doing everything for Ohio State on defense. And to know that he then, I guess because of all that stuff, maybe those first couple years, you kind of lose sight a little bit. Everybody knows he's from Pickerington, local kid. But he grew up a diehard Buckeye fan. He talked about it a lot over those last few days that, it's like you or I being diehard diehard fans growing up, but actually being good at football too and having a chance to go to Ohio State and being one of the best players on the team. So those losses hurt him, as a player, but also because like it's his program. It's what he grew up cheering for. And I think just how he talked about, trying to relate to guys. And look, I'm sure NIL and other things were a factor for all those guys, as it should be in this day and age. You have to consider those things. But as he really talked about, like, hey, we need to think about something bigger than ourselves. I mean, if I'm being honest, the way this is kind of shaping up so far, it reminds me a little bit of Michigan last year, where you've got all these veterans, all these guys come back, you hear brotherhood. And I think Ohio State's brotherhood's been there before. I think they've got a really good culture, but it almost feels like that's elevated this year because you have so many guys that are back, so many guys that have not achieved what they want to achieve. Sawyer talked about how, I walk into the Woody every day and I see all these trophies and banners and all this stuff. And he's like, I've done nothing to earn none of that so far. Right. And how that truly does sting him. And I think he, kind of reminded others in his class of the same thing to bring them back. It just feels like they truly have a true team and that true, quote unquote brotherhood, and that they've got a common purpose. And yeah, if it all comes full circle like that, then yeah, Jack Sawyer's legacy is absolutely going to be cemented in Columbus.
Yeah, I love that quote, man. I've been here for 3 years and not helped our team and this organization win any of those. And it's a lot to kind of get up and say that, man, because I don't know. If I hadn't helped my team, I probably wouldn't be bringing that up, man. I'd be saying something, going the John Cooper route and saying, well,
and if you don't care about that brotherhood, you still could have went pro.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he was going to get drafted. He may improve his stock. That's certainly a thing. It could, but there's no guarantees. And yeah, it just reinforces to me, like I said, if it does happen, you hit it. I mean, it's a legacy moment. When real fans think about it, it could be the same kind of impact as what Cardale did down the stretch, like forming this team. Sawyer helped bring a lot of those guys back. And if those guys end up contributing and winning a title, you're going to have to give them a huge amount of credit for that.
Mike Doss vibes a little bit too.
Yeah.
Came back, won the title, didn't have to come back, probably shouldn't have come back, give him the stock. This team's a confident team, and you saw a lot of that in Indy, and probably none as much as from Denzel Burke. And I want just a fraction of his confidence in life because he had some really, really good quotes. Ask about why he kind of put it out there that this season was natty or bust. He said, quote, "Yeah, I just kind of put it out there just to get the younger guys, the transfers, to understand I ain't come back for no BS. We're here to win it all. We're going to need everybody. We've got to hold each other accountable, and every game is a matchup game this year. No matter who we're playing, it's our job to just take them out and dominate." Gosh, man, I love that. That's getting the juices flowing. That's like, I want to see some Ohio State football, man. I got Denzel Burke talking, had a really strong bounce back season last year. Yeah. One of the guys like Sawyer that came back when he probably didn't have to, and he's ready to go. Another great quote, "I want to be recognized as the best corner to ever come through here."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's going to happen unless he has about 12 interceptions this year, but he's damn good and he's damn confident. He's definitely playing the right position with the confidence that he has. But I liked a couple of things he said in some of the breakout sessions and whatnot as well. But I mean, he basically admitted he got a little complacent his sophomore year after he started as a freshman and had a great year. And we know, his sophomore campaign wasn't quite what he or anybody else was expecting. And I think he's just been building off of that now for a year and a half or whatever it is. And, reinforcing that confidence. I think Dave, they had asked Dave something about, Burke, and Dave said that, yeah, he thought he was, thought Burke was one of the absolute best in the country. And they asked Burke what, he thought about Dave saying that. And he said, he's not wrong. So Burke is ready to strap it up. I love his deadpan seriousness too. Like the dude is just standing on business. He talks about the secondary being feared in the Woody and all those things, and he believes all of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's great. I love it because, the whole iron sharpens iron going against that receiver core. It's going to make him better every day. And, that's when Ohio State's been great and had great teams that won national titles. They had people like that on the roster that were not playing around and were dead serious about what they were doing. And they made no bones about it.
Yeah, loved hearing everything you had to say. Another theme that I caught, and I know you did too, is the players having Ryan Day's back big time.
Yeah.
And Jack Sawyer had several quotes on it. But all three spoke about their support and love of their head coach in breakout sessions. But, on the podium, Sawyer had this to say, quote, "Coach Day, he's the only coach I'd want to play for in college football. I'd commit to him 100 times over if I could. So that's why when we talk about coming back, a lot of us have felt like we're his first real recruiting class. And we kind of all thought we let him down in the sense of not reaching the goals that we set out. We signed our name on the dotted line. So I think that going through the things we've gone through the past few years with Coach Day, it definitely feels like we've gone through it hand in hand. Also said, quote, if you ask Coach Day's man enough to sit up here and tell you that's part of the job he signed up to do. And this is in reference to the losses to Michigan. Went on to say, quote, but me being a guy who would go to war for him any day, regardless of the topic, I think he gets wrongly criticized on a bunch of stuff. Also said, quote, I think that Coach Day, he's a phenomenal guy on and off the field. And regardless of the heat he took, fair or not, he remained the same. He remained humble and confident in who he is. And I really like that because, I'm in the Day defender camp, and I know there's a vocal camp, and quite frankly, I understand some of it. You lose 3 straight to Michigan, it's going to make people a little grumpy. But I love seeing that. And they all had similar thing. I think Burke's had something to say on Big Ten about guys in their basements, and I don't know if that's a shot at us or not, but it's out there. And I love to see that because you worry about what are the signs of a guy is losing a program. What's a Mark Helfrich or, who's the guy that's losing something that was built by someone else for him? And recruiting, culture are the two things, besides, the win-loss stuff. Recruiting and culture are the two things that probably jump out. If you start slipping recruiting, okay, this guy doesn't have it. Day has not slipped there at all. Culture, you're seeing some of this stuff right here. The guy's having his back. The players love him. We've talked about it a million times. I just think he's lost to, some unfortunate games to some really, really good Michigan teams and had weaknesses in a few of them. Quarterback one year, defense another year, and just things didn't go right. But I do not expect the Michigan game to be a one-score nail-biter this year. Let's put it that way. I think Oregon's the toughest game on the schedule. But I do. I just like seeing the guys, having his back. And they read what's going on. They see the criticism as well. And to Jack's point, Ryan isn't shirking from it. Right. Cooper, you go back and read some of his interviews or watch some interviews of Cooper, and he's like he was kind of sly about it, but he would blame other people all the time for everything. And Day doesn't do that, right? And, I don't know. I really like seeing that because the guys, they didn't have to say that. Jack didn't have to say it. Denzel didn't have to say what he said. It was unprompted. It wasn't like, hey, do you like your coach? Putting him on the spot. They brought it up on their own.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that out because I was going to. I think a lot of that it wasn't prompted. Tell us about Coach Day. Why do you like Coach Day? It wasn't layups like that. They were going out of their way to talk about their coach. And I think both can be true. I think, Day maybe had some times to maybe a little bit of rabbit ears or responding to what he thought people thought about his team's weaknesses. So therefore he tried to shove it down his own team's throat or whatever to prove a point or whatever. And it came back to bite him a couple times. But I will say one thing he has been that I would think as players do appreciate is that he is not afraid to make changes either, right? Whether it's getting rid of some staff, whether, and depending on who he might replace that staff with, hearing that, that criticism or suggestion that he's got to be more of a CEO. He's done all those things, right? Like, I think he listens to a lot of that stuff and self-evaluates a lot. And it's unfortunate that he on paper, 0-3 against Michigan is a real thing, and I'm certainly not going to make any excuses for that. But I think like you said, it can also be true that this was not, a couple of those Michigan teams that maybe, Tressel or Urban were beaten up at the, end and beginning of their tenures, where they were they were kind of layup games. Only the rivalry, the ghosts of the rivalry were going to cause an upset on some of those games. So, I think the players respond to all that stuff, and he's been the right coach. I think at the right time, as you think about how players have a lot more control and you think about things like mental health and whatnot actually being okay to talk about, especially in a macho sport like football, his history and whatnot, I think it's very easy for today's player to relate to Ryan Day and feel that he's a genuine guy. It's probably very easy to want to play for him. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier of reminding me a little bit about the Michigan team. Think about how that team loved Harbaugh. And even the cheating, it seemed to only galvanize that. They may not talk about it because they weren't supposed to, but I feel like it just brought that team together even closer. I think some of this criticism of Day it sounds like it's having the same kind of effect.
Yeah, you notice how there's the notion that one man's freedom fighters is another man's terrorists. Depending on how you look at it, and you can see it in the movie Star Wars or anywhere around you could. If you're the Empire in Star Wars, you think Luke and Han and those guys were terrorists. Straight up just terrorists, right? So for me, Michigan players, the world saw that as a cheating scandal. But if I'm in the Michigan football locker room, I'm looking at it and talking to my buddies about it being a high-tech surveillance operation. We just ran on it. There's a way to frame everything, and it did galvanize it. That's a great point. So, there are coaches out there, Gundy, Lincoln Riley, Ferentz, a lot of guys that don't fire coaches. And Dave's like, oh, special team coordinator, people talking about him being bad on the internet, let me fire him. And it was deserved. He wasn't a great coach, but he's done some things that people constantly complain at all levels of sports.
That one was a little late, but yeah,
a little bit.
He still made the change.
It's tough, man. You get to know people's families, and
Oh, I get it.
Can't be easy, but
easier to say than do, for sure.
But you look at his body count, man. You got Parker Fleming, you got Shiano, you got Combs. Corey Dennis. He's not been afraid to be the Grim Reaper, man, on some of this stuff. He's like, hey, my job's in line. I get paid a lot of money. I'm sorry I'm going to have to tell you guys to find a new job. And kudos to him for doing that. Let's conclude the OSU segment of the show here with 2 questions and 1 answer. And the first question's on the offensive line. I heard some stuff this week. Day all but said Josh Fryer was the guy at right tackle. He said, quote, right now he's our right tackle. And, that's good enough for me. It sounds like Josh Fryer's the right tackle. Got it. And, he said he thinks a lot of the guys coming out of the summer, their bodies look different. And that's a credit to all the work they probably put in. It's kind of an experienced line. There are some holes to fill, but there are a lot of guys that are back. And there are 4 guys, depending on what you want to believe, there are 4 guys battling for center/right guard. Carson Hinsman, Tegra, Luke Montgomery, and Seth McLaughlin. And I still have a hard time thinking McLaughlin won't be the center. But Dave did say he can play right guard. I mean, to kind of left that door open. Where do you kind of see this going?
Yeah, I think Simmons at left tackle. I think Donovan at left tackle and Donovan at left guard. I think McLaughlin's going to be the center. At this point, it seems like they're talking up Hinsman enough that if I had to bet right now, I'd say Hinsman's your starting right guard and then Fryer at right tackle. You mentioned about, changing their bodies. He singled out Fryer even before media days about that. He talked about Hinsman a lot about that. Sawyer was talking about Hinsman this week. I think, but I do think Tegra, Shabola, if it's not Hinsman at right guard, I do think it'll be Tegra. But this team better hope a tackle doesn't get hurt, because to me that was the biggest surprise of all the roster shifting, all the things that happened is that they didn't bring a right tackle in, and I don't know how seriously they did, and maybe they struck out, or if they really just felt good about Fryer and they missed on some depth pieces, or they thought they had all their depth in house. I have no idea. They would certainly know better than me, but that was kind of I'll say shocking, but I was really surprised that there wasn't at least another piece brought in. So they're making a pretty big bet on Fryer. So what I try to tell myself through the Buckeye fan lens is that, I think Taylor Decker, I've said it before, right, was one of the worst right tackles for a season. I can't remember if he was a sophomore or what year he was when he had that awful year, but then he came back and he's still playing in the NFL. So guys can make leaps. So you really have to hope for that from Josh Fryer. But yeah, right now I think, Simmons and Donovan are obviously locked in on the left side. I think you're right. McLaughlin's gonna be the center. They said he hasn't had any problems with consistent snaps, to this point. And then, Fryer's at right tackle. So it really comes down to Hinsman or Tegra probably at right guard. And I wouldn't be stunned if Hinsman was that first guy.
I love hearing what Sawyer said about Simmons too, as his athleticism, because we've heard that for a long time. It's just been, getting the mental aspects down, the false starts and things like that. Do you like the line? What you just laid out? Do you like that line? Do you think it's a good line?
I think it's a good line. It's going to have to prove to me it can be a great line. I don't think it has great depth either on that line, particularly on the edges. Like I said, they better hope a tackle doesn't get hurt, because unless Tegra can fill one of those spots, we saw Luke over there a little bit last year, young. I still think he has a bright future and he could be a starting tackle eventually for Ohio State. But if he had to fill in early and often this year, that would worry me. I'm not sure Zen Mikowski is someone you want to bet on if you're trying to win a championship, if I'm just being honest. So, this team wants to run the ball this year, and you need some road graders that can do it. But I think the starting 5 feel like they would be, pretty good, but they're going to have to prove to me they can be better than pretty good, I guess. You in a similar boat, or are you a little softer on the offensive line?
I'm always bullish on this stuff, because I'm looking at this. I think it's a good line, like you said, and maybe not an elite line yet. I've got this weird theory right now on Justin Fry that he might struggle with recruiting, but he's a heck of a developer. Is kind of where I'm at with him. The line made some moves towards the end of last season. He got better and better. I'm throwing out the Cotton Bowl, conveniently able to do that, but that wasn't the line. So that's where I want to believe. And I think also, with a running quarterback, 2 really good running backs, good wide receivers, and Chip Kelly, they're going to be able to scheme some things to do with the line that are going to make them look better than they probably should look in some scenarios, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I think over the balance of the season, it's those matchup games when you really are going against, those teams that are going to bring it. Will Ohio State be healthy up front? Because again, I just don't know that I love the depth, and will some of those guys that you're really counting on to take that next leap, are they all going to do it? Because they're all going to need to when you start talking about winning playoff games.
The good news too, though, is they're also, what I heard from Taylor Decker, you brought him up years ago. Someone on the team told me, with him, it was iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
And these guys are going, fall camp's getting ready to start. They're going to go against a really, really, really good defensive line. So they're going to have to get better.
Yeah. And I don't think they're going to be terrible, but I mean, last year, what was it, like 70th in the country in, yards per game or yards per I mean, just not what you're used to at Ohio State. So I think they'll be better than that. Will they be elite? I don't know. Do they have to be elite for Ohio State to win a national title? I'm not saying they have to be that either. But obviously they can't be a liability.
Yeah, for sure. Another question, quarterback. Day is saying, he's asked up there, and he said, the first few weeks of fall camp, we'll get a better idea of where everybody is. Not naming a starter yet. I think the assumption is that it's going to be Will Howard. I mean, maybe Julian's saying nipping at his healed a little bit there. Denzel Burke did say he needs to see a little more out of Howard. I thought that was interesting in fall camp from what he saw in the spring. And he was, pretty honest about that. It didn't really count. Yeah. So I don't know that. To me, quarterback's the biggest question mark on the team. You got a guy, Howard, that's got a lot of experience, can run the ball, big body, has a lot of weapons around him. Is probably gonna, he's playing with more talent than he's ever played with in his life. So he's got the keys to the car, the Ferrari. But is he going to deliver? Is he going to be able to drive it? Right. And there were some concerns maybe in practices that we saw about some touch and accuracy and things like that. Could be really interesting to see, if he struggles early against, what should be a pretty easy non-conference schedule. If there's some struggles there, and people are like, some of the fans aren't calling for the other guy. I mean, big test, in October when they go to Oregon. That's pretty much the start of the season as far as most of us are concerned. Do you have concerns on Howard? Do you think he'll be the guy?
I think he'll be the guy, and I have some level of concern. I think it's yin and yang with the offensive line, right? The better the offensive line is, the better chance a quarterback has to look good. I like that Howard will be able to move around in the pocket in ways that McCord couldn't behind a line that was leaky at times, so that should help. I think just the threat of him running and things like that may, keep teams from, blitzing too much, and all those things should hopefully play in Howard's favor. But yeah, I mean, I think the fact that he's played a lot of games is going to show up when they start playing games. It didn't show up in the spring game. It didn't show up in fall camp, but the fact that he played a lot of games, I think, matters when you're really playing in front of 100,000 people. But when you're learning a new system in January and February and March and all that, you're probably going to show, some weakness. So I'm certainly not bullish on Howard. But I think that, he's got enough experience and enough skill and enough around him that if he can be a little bit more than a game manager, but not be like what you need from like a CJ Stroud kind of thing, that I think Ohio State, I think they can win a national championship with Will Howard under center. And if someone else other than Will Howard is playing late in the season, I worry that things just didn't go very well, because I'm a big Julian Sayin fan, but I feel like that's maybe that's a year away kind of thing. And Devin Brown hasn't proved that he can play without getting hurt. So I think you really need Devin Brown to be upright and functional and be a distributor all year.
You don't think Julian's the number 2 guy?
I think
he can be.
I think he can be. I think he absolutely can be. But I think if he's asked to be the number 1, then you probably are going into full blown game manager mode, and that just gets a little trickier to win.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Those are the 2 questions. The answer now, and we're just going to start and roll right into this with what Jack Sawyer had to say about Jeremiah Smith.
There's a lot of things I can list. That kid is just special. I mean, that's the only word I can use to describe him. Having been in his shoes, meaning being a 5-star recruit and having a lot of hype around him coming in, I was like, man, I just want to see him, practice a couple of times. I don't want him to feel like, if he doesn't play this year or if he doesn't live up to the hype his freshman year, then, but then I saw him for the first time at the first practice. I was like, holy shit, this kid's good. So, he's a great young player. He's got a great future ahead of him. He's got a great head on his shoulders. Very humble kid. So, whatever he gets, he's earned and he's worked for it. So, I'm super excited for him.
Holy shit, this kid's good. And you know what's funny is like it's cool. Jack, you can tell, is a great interview, and he's always going to be that way. But that's the phrase almost to the word that everyone says when they see him practice for the first time. And remember when he cooked Denzel Burke, who wants to be one of the best cornerbacks in Ohio State history, should be one of the best cornerbacks in the country.
Yeah, he's like,
and
I don't
Denzel's like,
it.
I don't want to hear it. Number 4 is the truth. Leave me alone. Like, kid's a freshman, just came over and cooked on him. I'm so excited to see him play this year. And some of the other quotes are just fantastic. Day said, quote, the thing you recognize is how good he is at the not talent thing. Says he's got the talent, but then you watch the not, preparation, work outside of practice, maturity. Emeka said, quote, he's the prototypical wide receiver you'd want, but he's mature beyond his years. You don't really have to get on him too much. He's going to work. He's going to keep himself humble. Burke said, quote, to be honest, he's like that, like that. Quote, he has a bit of Marv in him, and he's only a freshman now. So imagine what he's going to be like in his third year. It's going to be nuts. And that sounds great. Ohio State fans, to hear Denzel Burke talk about a guy and say he's going to be a nuts, and to hear Jack Sawyer say, holy shit, that kid's good or this kid's good. I don't know, Katzenmoyer, maybe the last time I've been this, Maurice, maybe. I'm trying to think of the last time I was this excited for a true freshman, because we're kind of steel. We've been around this biz for a long time. A lot of guys come with hype and don't see the field for 2.5 years.
Yep.
It's Ohio State. There are good players everywhere. You look at Zach Harrison, ton of hype coming in, and never really reached what we thought he was going to be at Ohio State. He was a good player, but never really got to what we thought he was going to be. And right away, people are like, oh, this guy's it. And you're in for a treat. So I cannot wait to see him play. Someone, I forget who it was, one of the players said he's going to help us win a lot of games this year. And to be saying that about a freshman that hasn't played a game yet, that's incredible.
Yeah, he's going to start. He's going to be a top 3 receiver. I don't think there's any doubt about it. If he's healthy, all things being equal, he's going to be easily a top 3 receiver on this team. If anything, Day's talking about who's going to be, 4, 5, 6, and 7. When he started rattling off those names when he was asked that question, he didn't say Jeremiah Smith because Jeremiah Smith's already the top 3.
Ballard, Kojo, guys like that.
Yeah. He talked about Ennis and Bryson Rogers and all those other guys, but he didn't mention Smith because Smith is a top 3 receiver. He's a starter. He's going to play starter reps whether he's on the first snap of the season or not. And it's for what you said. Everybody already knows, like you said, a physical freak. And if Burke, a lot of guys can be excited for the season, whatever. But we talked about Burke. Burke don't play. Like he's not throwing stuff around just to say it. He's not wired like that. And he's talking about this dude being the truth now, and it's just going to be even more ridiculous as time goes on. He's the only person I need to hear from it because that's also who's guarding him in practice, right? So that's all I need. All I need is Burke's endorsement. But you hit what Egbuka and Day said, and I think that's really what stands out. That's going to help him get it's going to help him stay on the field. He's going to get on the field because he's a freak, but he's going to stay on the field because he's committed to being a good blocker. He's committing to know the playbook. He's committed that he can be like an every down guy, not just when you might want to throw it to him, put him in there. Like he's going to prove that he can be an every down player right off the rip. And that whole not talent thing, that's what I wrote down too. It totally stuck with me. That and they've been saying that since January. This is not like somebody had to pull him in a corner and talk to him and say, hey, you have a chance to play this year if you just get your head on straight. He came in ready to rock. And it won't surprise me if that dude has 700-800 yards receiving.
Yeah, it will help immediately with recruiting if he has a good year, because you're going to be able to look at these 5 stars that are still out there. Kid that's committed to Oregon, that Ohio State and Texas are still battling for. Say, look what he's doing right away in our offense.
Right, and I say that, and so do you. Like cautionary of we've seen this happen. Dontre Wilson wasn't as high of a recruit, but it was like the sexy Percy Harvin position and this, that, and the other. He didn't play forever. We've seen so much of that I think you and I are pretty temperate in that, and I can't imagine this dude not being a legit factor, like a problem that people have to scheme for weekly, like from day one. I will be surprised if it's anything but that with him.
Yeah, I agree. And shout out Dontre Wilson. Love his kid, Fat Rat, that he used to tweet about all the time. I wonder, Fat Rat's probably like 13 or 14 or 15 now. Like Fat Rat may be getting offers soon. So let's do some rundowns on some other stuff for media days and beyond. DeShaun Foster, brand new UCLA coach. Coaches get up there, they have opening remarks, they take questions. Some guys can filibuster for 20 minutes. Some guys will talk for 5 minutes. He did neither. He basically, he had all the energy of me doing like a presentation in class in 5th grade when I hadn't prepared for the topic. I mean, that was the vibe. And let's just roll the video.
Football-wise, we're just excited. You know, I'm sure you guys don't know too much about UCLA, but our football program, but we're in LA. It's us and USC. We I'm just basically excited, really. That's it. Any questions?
That was incredible. Let's start off the top. Quote, I'm sure you guys don't know too much about UCLA. Yeah, DeShaun, just a brand new school that has no history of championships, has never won anything. Ohio State's never even played them. Nobody knows anything about UCLA, so thanks for bringing that up. Then he hits us with the, quote, we are in LA, it's us and USC. Like, take a crap on them, dude. You know, you hate them. You're Michigan. You're not going to just say it's us and them from the same city, but we do appreciate you telling us what city UCLA and USC are located. And then the last one is the last quote in that segment. We just turns to the side and laughs. I'm just basically excited. That's it. Any questions? I feel so bad for piling on the guy because it could have just been like some stage fright, but he's like a coach. These are people that talk to boosters, talk to like alumni clubs. Like this should be in their wheelhouse. Was it stage fright, camera fright, or was it like he just didn't prepare?
I was wondering if he knew there was an assignment. Did he know he had to get up there and speak or something? I don't know. He seemed like totally surprised by the whole thing, but I enjoyed like the nervous Beavis cackle he mixed in a couple times in between his statements. That was gold.
You raise a good point. I mean, if he wasn't prep, that SID is the worst SID in college sports. Like he did not watch any Big Ten media days prior.
They have one. I mean, they're so far in debt. Maybe they don't have them. They don't.
Might not. So that was fun. Sharon Moore the new Michigan coach, spoke yesterday and didn't say a ton. Said he talks to Harbaugh every now and then. Talked to him a couple days ago. Was asked about, playing Ohio State multiple times in the same season. And he was like, yes, bring it on. I would love that, essentially. And that may happen. I don't know if you've seen some of the guys simulating or playing the new EA college football game. But there's quite a few people who have already played Michigan 3 times. I mean, they've got him once. They got him in the Big Ten championship. And they got him again in the semifinals of the playoffs. So 2 is well within reach any season. 3 may not be, completely unheard of. I wouldn't count on it happening a ton. I'm sure that the CFP would probably try to figure out a way to get those 2 away from each other for as long as possible. But like, there could be years when Ohio State's playing them 3 times, and I hate to agree with Sharon Moore, but like, I'd like that too. I'd like it a lot. I'd like to wake up mad at a school in Ann Arbor 3 times a year. It'd be fantastic because can't do it in basketball until they get a little better there. But like for football, 3 times, easy.
Yeah, we've talked about it numerous times. I know some folks appreciate just only having 1 and leaving it that way, but yeah, to me, it only adds fuel to the fire if you play it more than once a season. So, all for it. And yeah, I was hoping Sharon would say something a little more. Say something, give us something that we could hate on. But yeah, it was pretty vanilla rundown today yesterday from everything that I read and heard.
What do you think his win totals this year?
9.
9. I was going to say 10, but I can be talked into 9. Like, I mean,
10,
it's
10
hard.
won't surprise me. 10 won't surprise me, but I'm not going to come on this show and give him double digits.
It's hard to take over for a guy like that and to be just as good. And it's really hard. And, maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's really smart and a heck of a coach and, they got someone great. But, man, the odds are kind of against that. So many times you see where it just doesn't work out. So, wheels don't always fall off the first season, but they eventually do if the guy's not the guy. So really interested to see how it goes. Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti was asked by Dave Revson about the beloved Big Ten map commercial and what the Big Ten's going to do with 4 new teams. And, I love that commercial. I think it's one of the greatest commercials ever made. It's catchy as hell. The animation's fantastic. And Petiti said, quote, "I learned very quickly in this job, but there's a lot of passion around the Big Ten map commercial. So I would say to fans, we understand and we get that. So more to come." And I don't know. I'm excited. I'm taking that to think they're reworking it and putting 4 new teams in. It's going to be incredible. It's going to span the country now. It's going to start, in LA, hop up to Northwest and rip across the country and land in Minnesota or Iowa or somewhere and then go on, right?
We can only hope.
Man, I'm here for that. Netflix announced a Connor Stalions documentary. It's called Sign Stealers. It's out August 27th. He's going to share his side of Michigan's alleged sign-stealing scheme that turned him into a viral villain. That was from the Netflix release. Worth pointing out, Connor Stalions has still not given any interviews to anyone, so this will be the first time he talks about it. And also worth pointing out, Netflix used the word alleged, but the NCAA told the Big Ten it could prove the sign-stealing operation occurred. They've got proof. I can't wait to see how this is spun. I hate that they're going to give him a platform to spin it because, it's ahead of the NCAA making their decisions and whatnot, and there's a chance, but what does he care? He could go on there and lie and say he did not do X, Y, or Z. NCAA could come out and say, here's proof he did X, Y, and Z, and it's already, it's already out the window. He's going to get paid for this. The Anna Sorokin, the Russian lady in New York that was fleecing everyone, opening art galleries and taking money from everyone. They paid her $320K for the Inventing Anna special they did. And of course she's in jail, so she had to use it to, make restitution, and then she didn't get to keep the money, or most of it at least. So Connor will get to keep his. I'm sure he'll get 6 figures of some flavor, and he can just go on there and spin it. And I'm not okay with that. So I will watch it. I'm sure you will as well.
I'll watch it, but yeah, it's if you're a Buckeye fan, I don't know what you're hoping for from that. Whatever you're hoping for, you're not going to get. He's getting paid to do it. He's obviously still loyal to Michigan, so he's not going to do anything that, is certainly going to do everything he can to make sure he's protecting, Harbaugh and some others, at least in the court of public opinion. So yeah, I'll watch it because I'm interested in some of the things that you really can't, that you can't deny. As others you can still plausibly deny that, we might think are bogus, but it'll catch my eye, but not because I'm expecting there's going to be something in there that's going to make me feel better as an Ohio State fan.
We need to the next day on the site, we need to just fact check the whole thing. 3 minutes in, he said this. Well, here's what really happened. Here's what the NCAA has so far found. We need to do that. I'm kind of grumpy. He's getting paid to do this, getting paid to cheat.
Yeah,
but you're right.
He probably needs it though, because what's he? Is he doing anything? He can buy a lot of used vacuum cleaners.
I was going to say, is he just
those bad boys up?
Is he bailing on the vacuum business or what, man?
I don't know, man.
That's weak. Yeah. I'll watch it with some hate. And speaking of Michigan, Warde Manuel, the athletic director, news earlier in the week, the National Football Foundation announced that he will receive the John L. Toner Award for, quote, excellence in athletics administration. And that's incredible. That's so rich to me. This is a guy, he's the AD at Michigan, right?
Excellence, yeah.
Yeah. Excellence in athletic administration. He had the sign stealing scandal. Had to suspend his head football coach twice. I've never heard of a coach being suspended twice in one season. He had to fire an assistant football coach mid-season. That happens everywhere all the time. That's very normal. And then fired his basketball coach a little bit later. And this is the guy, remember, who slapped another Big Ten coach in a post-games. Also fought with Gent in the team facilities. I don't know how you land on that guy. Yeah, he's got a natty. His team won the natty. Give him that. But how do you land on that guy for excellence in athletics? And there's so many good athletic directors out there that didn't have to suspend their coach twice, didn't have to fire an assistant football coach midseason, didn't fire their basketball coach. That's a bad year for any athletic director, objectively. They have the natty. He can point to it. He can say natty. Now that's all he's got. But the other stuff, if you're an AD and that's your year, man, I had an awful year. I hated this year, right?
Right. Yeah, I could see the award for perseverance or somehow making sure he didn't get fired through all of this. But yeah, other than that, I don't know what you give him an award for. It reminds me of who was it? Rafael Palmeiro for the Orioles. He DH'd 140 of 160 games, but he got the Gold Glove at first base. He played literally 25 games at first base and got a Gold Glove. It's just this award clearly has no criteria.
How did they land on that? I would have been rioting if
It
I
must
was a
have just
fan
not
of-
been anybody else that they wanted to, that was a household enough name to give.
It's first base. You put your cleat on the bag and you hold the glove out. Was Raffy? Was he just like wrapping up dimes like in line drives? Like I don't know, whatever. But yeah, very similar vibes. And congrats, Warde, on your award for excellence in athletics administration. Last thing for this one, man. Camp Randall, they announced, will start selling booze this season. Becomes the 16th Big Ten school to sell booze in the football stadium. Buckeyes, of course, began selling alcohol in the shoe in 2016, and I haven't heard any crazy stories. I don't feel like it's backfired anywhere. I mean, kids, people are going to come drunk to games whether you sell it in the stadium or not. But Wisconsin likes to tie it on, man, and that's like two things they're known for: cheese and getting drunk. I think are the two things most Wisconsinites are known for. So I'm really kind of excited to see. And it's a big stadium too, so I think it's going to shatter some alcohol sales records, very comfortably.
I was stunned that it wasn't already a thing. Like when
they were worried. They were worried.
16th, I was like, huh? I just couldn't even believe it because, like you said, I mean, everybody's boozing at the game. They might as well make some money off it. I can't believe they didn't come to that conclusion a long time ago. But definitely a place that you and I need to get to eventually. And I'm glad that when we do, we'll be able to drink a beer while we watch the game.
For sure, man. I can't wait. I mean, I'm excited to see what they do. But I was just, for some reason, thinking of Vodka Sam. Remember that Iowa fan years ago? They got shit-faced and tried to fight cops and stuff at the Iowa game. God bless this sport. Yeah, it'd be exciting. And again, they're going to shatter some alcohol sales records. A lot of old style, a lot of beer, a lot of Milwaukee's best going down. Wonder what they'll have on tap because they've got a rich brewing tradition right down the road too in Milwaukee too. So. Very German town, very beersy town, and good for them. 16th. So there's two schools that are holding out. I'll have to figure out who those two are. Maybe one is Northwestern because they got a playground for a stadium this year. I don't know. You see, they're playing their games to 30 people on the lake. They're like, bring your own fold-out chairs, man. We're gonna play we're gonna play Iowa.
Mulch around the field, skin your knee. Yeah.
Some of the dads got to work the lines markers or the downs markers. 3 dads on the Downs crew. But yeah, I mean, it'll be fun and good for them. So, hey, thanks for tuning in to us, man. The season's here. We're going to be doing this more regularly as we get through camp and, of course, all season long. So really appreciate it. Go Bucks, as always. Take care of each other and be good to each other.